Welcome to the Mango Monkey Show. My name is Mango Monkey. Okay, so I get this question all the time. Is it better to buy a brand new property or a second-hand property? What do you think? To me, I think this is a difficult question to answer because the answer is different depending on who you are, how much work you want to do, and how much risk you want to take. Generally speaking, second-hand properties are cheaper and offer better value. I like them better, but not as my first property. It's harder to buy a second-hand property. You need to compete with many other buyers for the same property. If you buy a brand new property, it's very easy. It's like walking into a department store, browsing for a pair of shoes. There is a price list. You can just pick the one you like and the one you can afford. The shop assistant is very friendly. It's a very enjoyable purchasing environment. You actually get treated almost like a king. What I personally think is good to buy as a first-time buyer is a brand new apartment which is already completed, or perhaps a house and land package if it is within your budget. You do not want off-the-plan apartments which can take 1 or 2 years to complete. By that time, your home loan pre-approval will have expired. You may have changed your job, you may have 1 or 2 kids, bank policies may have changed, you may not be able to get the home loan anymore. A lot of things can happen in 1 or 2 years. If you buy a brand new apartment which is already completed, or a house and land package, the home loan approval is generally finalized today. House and land is a little bit more risky than a completed apartment, but it is still less risky than an off-the-plan apartment. So you should stay away from off-the-plan. Now with a brand new property, you don't need to pay for a strata report because there's nothing to report on, the building is brand new, and you don't need to pay for a building inspection. The builder gives you warranty similar to when you buy an iPhone. Double check with your solicitor, but I believe in New South Wales, the builder gives you a warranty for at least 6 years for structural defects, which is serious defects. So if the property gets sold to somebody else, or if your home loan doesn't end up getting approved, you haven't had to spend much money at all. Another reason I am recommending buying a brand new apartment is because it's sometimes possible to get a full home loan approval before you risk losing the 0.25% deposit. It doesn't always work with all banks, but some banks let you get a full unconditional home loan approval before you sign a contract of sale. So the agent can potentially give you what's called a sales advice. This is essentially a document where the agent intends to sell the property to you. Technically it's not binding, but 99% of the time it does end up getting sold to you. So with this method, if the property valuation doesn't stack up and you cannot get the home loan unless you put in more deposit, then you haven't lost a single dollar because you haven't actually put in 0.25% deposit. The agent will probably want you to pay the 0.25% deposit before they issue the sales advice, but because the contract has not been exchanged, you are entitled to get the deposit back. I think as a first-time buyer with a very small amount of deposit, it's very important to minimize your costs if the property doesn't end up being purchased by yourself. The thing with a second-hand property is that there are a few different cost items that you need to pay for, and you cannot get them refunded if you don't end up being the owner of the property. So what can potentially go wrong after you found the property you like? Well, number one is sometimes the bank may not have assessed your application in full. So if you're only putting 5% deposit, what some banks do is they don't actually assess your application. They give you a pre-approval based on the numbers you give them, and they don't verify your supporting documents. So your pay slips and everything else do not actually get verified. They don't get looked at. Another potential reason is the approval of the home loan hinges on the property being acceptable to the bank. Sometimes the property value itself is not an issue, but the valuer may think that there's some risk in the property. It may take many months to sell, which probably means the banks will not like it. So for those reasons, I personally think it's a good idea to avoid having to pay for a strata report and building inspection. Now, another reason it may be a good idea to buy a brand new property is that as a first-time buyer in New South Wales, you could get a grant from the government of $10,000. This means you may not necessarily need to have 5% deposit. It could be 10,000 less than 5%. For example, if your property is 600,000, instead of having to have 30,000, which is 5%, it might be okay if you only have 20,000. Generally, you want to have a little bit more than that because you need to have money to pay for your solicitor and some other things which you do not quite know in advance. So I suggest having between 2,000 and 5,000 extra. Okay, so I have mentioned the costs which you may need to pay for before you become the owner of the property. Another thing that you can consider is the costs that you may need to pay for after you are the owner of the property. With a brand new property, generally speaking, there will be less maintenance. For example, the tap in the bathroom should be working. If it is a second-hand property, sometimes it doesn't work. And maybe after you fix it, it stops working again 6 months later, so you have to keep paying for these things. And generally speaking, if you live in the home, a brand new home will feel nicer. It doesn't have that smell of an old house. And it doesn't have cockroaches usually, so usually it feels better. The appliances are under warranty. If it breaks down, you can get it fixed up for free. So if you are living from paycheck to paycheck with no savings as a buffer, then it may be the case that if you buy a brand new property, it works out better for you because there's no maintenance work. So what you can do is you can buy a brand new apartment a bit further from where you are, a bit further from the city, a bit further from your workplace, but make sure the property price is not actually higher. Make sure you're moving horizontally. So if you think you can afford a $600,000 home, stick to that price point, change the location, move further out instead of buying a more expensive home. You should also factor in the extra travel costs and don't forget to use the Opal off-peak hours whenever you travel. So what is my conclusion? Well, I think the extra costs in maintaining a second-hand property, to be honest, is probably not that big. You are probably still paying more if you buy a brand new property, but I think it's just more convenient and definitely it's easier to buy. There's usually less competition with a brand new property. Usually it's an apartment block, so if the unit you want is sold, you can go one floor above it, you can buy the unit next to it. There's normally maybe 100 or 200 units in the same building, and those 100 or 200 units are normally sold at the same time, so there's always something for you. You don't need to compete with someone else. The minimal upfront cost for me is a big deal. When I bought my first property, I didn't want to spend a few $100s or a few $1,000s doing different strata inspection reports. Also, after you look at properties for about a month, you tend to get sick of it. If you're buying a second-hand property, usually you need to spend a month or more to find one because oftentimes the one you like suddenly gets sold to someone else. So for me personally, I prefer to buy brand new. For my second property, I bought second-hand, but my first one I bought brand new. Okay, so what are the key takeaways of this video? Takeaway number 1. If you have 5% deposit, buy brand new property. It's probably going to have to be an apartment. You can try a house and land package. It may be harder to get something like that within the $600,000 price limit. The reason I said brand new is to minimize the upfront cost. The strata report, maybe building inspection and some other things associated with it. And the 0.25% deposit. If you buy brand new, sometimes you could get the home loan fully approved before you exchange the contract. Sometimes. Depends on the bank, depends on luck. If you have 10 or 20% deposit, well, you have more choices. You can probably buy second-hand from the beginning, but you may need to do a bit more work because the property you want to buy may be sold to someone else, so you may just need to spend more time looking for something. Now, takeaway number 3, get started now. Don't wait too long because property grows like a snowball. It keeps getting bigger and bigger. takeaway number 4, try not to buy something that's off the plan, something that will be finished in 1 or 2 years. The reason is that in 1 or 2 years your situation is probably a little bit different from now. You may have kids, you may have a different job. It's a lot more risky. There are some risks with the property itself. I'll talk about them in another video. But even from your own side, a lot of things can change with you, so it's best not to buy something off the plan. Okay, so I hope this video has been useful for you. Don't forget to smash that like button for me. And remember, I am not a financial planner. I am a mango monkey. I think I know how to buy property, but I could be wrong. I have an accounting degree. I think I know how to add numbers. But again, if you want to actually get something specific for you, you need to go and see a financial planner.